Retirement should be one of the happiest periods of your life. You've worked your entire career to get to a point where you no longer have to go to work. Unfortunately, many retirees feel regrets when they are actually retired. And in this video, we're going to get into 5 of the most common regrets that retirees face and things that you can do to prepare yourself to avoid them. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Financial Wellness Planning. My name is Derek Coffey, and I'm the founder of FWP. And when I worked in the finance industry, I predominantly worked with retirees. Naturally, the stories that I would hear from individual to individual would vary, but what I found is there were some common themes. And if you're preparing yourself to retire or you're a newly minted retiree, then I urge you to watch this video through to the end. Unlike the other videos that I've put out, this video is not all about the money. Of course, money is always going to be a common theme, but the point of this video is to inform you of the regrets that some of the people that I worked with had about their retirement. And by bringing these to light and helping you understand what those regrets were, my hope is that you can make your retirement what you've always wanted it to be. The most common regret that I would hear was the fact that they didn't save enough for their retirement. And in a lot of cases, people delay saving for their retirement. They live through their 20s, they live through their 30s, and even into their 40s, until they realize that they're less than 20 years away from not working anymore. So once they do get into retirement, they regret not saving sooner. If you lack resources in your retirement, it's going to affect the type of retirement you can live. It's going to affect the trips you can take, the hobbies that you can do, and the time that you can spend with people that you want to spend it with. If you are preparing yourself to retire, then it is time to put the pedal to the metal when it comes to your savings. If you're 10 years away from retirement, you still have time to build a decent-sized nest egg. If you're 20 years from retirement, then you could be well on your way to $500,000 by the time you hand in your notice. And if you don't believe me, I did a video on why $100,000 should be your first savings goal. And in that video, we get into the specifics of saving money and hitting that $100,000 level so that way your net worth can explode. Now, I'll put a link to that video in the description. If you watch it, you'll notice that it's not that far out of reach, and this is especially true if you receive an employer match. If you work for a company and they offer you free money for participating in their employer-sponsored plan, then you could be 7.5 years away from your first $100,000. But if you haven't started saving for your future, then start now. Don't wait any longer. The second most common regret that I would hear from the retirees that I worked with is that they didn't take better care of themselves physically. In your 20s, in your 30s, and maybe even into your 40s, you don't think about making your health a priority because those aches and pains really haven't set in yet. But as you get older, the effects of not taking care of yourself physically are going to compound. Taking care of yourself physically and financially both require the same amount of dedication. They both require the same amount of attention to ensure that you're on the right path. The reason that you should prioritize your health, especially in retirement, is that the healthier you are, the more enjoyable your retirement's going to be. If you're in poor health, then you're probably not going to be able to move around as much as maybe you would want to. So you're not going to be able to go on those trips or do those hobbies or run around with your grandchildren. Taking care of yourself physically has to become a priority. Put yourself on a regular exercise routine. Make sure that you're eating the right foods and prioritize those medical appointments. Maintaining your health as you age not only helps increase the chances that you're going to live longer, but it's also going to help reduce some of the costs associated with your healthcare in retirement. Speaking of healthcare-related costs, that was the third regret for a lot of the retirees that I worked with. They failed to plan for how much their healthcare was actually going to cost them when they were retired. Healthcare expenses are most likely going to be the largest financial burden that you're going to face in retirement. For the average married couple that's 65 years old, they can anticipate spending over $350,000 on their healthcare expenses in retirement. If they end up in a nursing home, at least in the state of Virginia, it's going to cost them about $117,000 a year, and that's as of 2024. If they end up in an assisted living facility, it's going to cost them almost $68,000. Failing to plan for those costs is going to introduce a lot of stress into your retirement. So what should you do to prepare? Well, the first thing you should do is understand Medicare. And Medicare isn't as straightforward as maybe it should be. But if you feel overwhelmed with it, I do have a video for it, and I'll put a link to it in the description of this video. But the purpose of Medicare is to be the main healthcare option for retirees in the U.S. And if you're 65 years old, you qualify for that coverage. Now, Medicare Parts A and B is what you're going to receive directly from the government, and the purpose of Medicare Parts A and B is to cover about 80% of your healthcare costs. The other 20%, you're expected to pay. Also keep in mind that Medicare doesn't cover prescription drugs. So if you have a prescription and you need to take that medication, you're going to need to get a Part D plan. To help cover that other 20% that's going to come out of your pocket, you can look into a Medicare Advantage or a Medicare supplement. The right option for you is going to depend upon what you want to do in your retirement. If you don't plan on going very far and you're going to stay fairly close to home, then a Medicare Advantage plan could be the right answer. If you plan on traveling and being away from home for extended periods of time, then you may want to look into a Medicare supplement. But either way, you do need to keep in mind that your medical insurance in retirement could run you upwards of $400 a month. And if you're married, then that's going to double. The second thing that you can do is familiarize yourself with long-term care insurance. Now, the purpose of long-term care insurance is to help offset some of the costs related to using a nursing home. It is not cheap, it is rather expensive, but if you or your spouse end up spending more than a year in a nursing home, it could be more than worth it. I also want you to keep in mind that Medicare doesn't cover long-term care. So if you decide to skip on a long-term care policy, you're going to have to cover those costs out of your own pocket. If you're married and you look into long-term care insurance and determine that maybe it's a little rich for what you can afford, then I beg you to at least get coverage on one of you. By doing that, you protect your assets from having to be liquidated to pay for your care. Not to mention, if one of you spends an extended period of time in a nursing home, then it could liquidate all of your assets. That means the surviving spouse is most likely going to end up in a Medicaid-funded facility, which none of us really want. The fourth regret was not having a hobby. You spent the last 30 or 40 years of your life working, and your work has become part of who you are. It's part of your identity. Once you retire, that part of you disappears, and it only makes sense for you to fill that void. Whether you decide to start traveling, pick up new hobbies, learn a new skill, whatever you're passionate about, you should do. By keeping yourself mentally and physically active, it's going to help you live longer. The less you do, the quicker you age. The more you do, the slower you age. So not only does keeping yourself busy help you live longer, it also helps fill that void from retiring. The final regret was not maintaining social connections. Throughout your working career, you worked with the same people every single day. You spent a third of your life with those same individuals, whether you like them or not. But in most cases, some of those individuals became your friends. Once you retire, since not everyone retires at the same time, you're going to feel isolated. You're not going to know what's going on at work. You're not going to have those conversations that you used to have. So in your retirement, you need to find those social connections. Whether it's through the hobbies that you decide to take on, whether it's through traveling and meeting new people, you need to find people that you can connect with. The other reason that I want you to focus on keeping those social connections alive is due to the fact your friends are going to start passing away. If you're not one of the first ones and you live a little bit longer than the others, you're going to endure those losses. Having a solid group of friends is going to help you during those rough times. And I know that's not something people really want to talk about, but it's a conversation that needs to be had. The final piece of the social connections is to reconnect with family and friends. Over the course of your career, you most likely put more energy into your job than you did the relationships that you had with your family and your friends. With this additional free time, you should prioritize spending time with the people that you love. Reconnect with your children. Help them raise their own children. Reconnect with your spouse. Make sure that you spend quality time together. Go on those trips. Find those common hobbies or the new skills and learn them together. But rekindle those relationships, the ones that you probably put on the back burner at one point, and strengthen those during your retirement. Ideally, before you retire, you address each of these 5 regrets. That way you can ensure your retirement is everything you had hoped it would be. When it comes to money, financial freedom is the ultimate goal. Retirement is the gold star of achieving that financial freedom. As you prepare for your retirement, I want you to keep these things in mind. I want you to fix your financial situation. I want you to fix your physical situation. I want you to ensure that you're properly covered for your healthcare needs in retirement. I want you to make sure you have hobbies ready for you when you finally call it quits, and I also want you to make sure you have someone to do it with. Doing all of these things are going to ensure that your golden years are, in fact, golden. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. If this video or any of the other videos that I've put out has provided you value, then hit that subscribe button. If you know someone that's preparing for retirement and they're not sure exactly what they're going to do, then send this video to them. Maybe it'll help them out. But I want to thank you so much for tuning in. I'll talk to you soon.